Hi, today I'm going to show you how to raise sales invoices in Clearbooks. Before you can raise an invoice, you need some customers set up. So to set up the customers, you go into contacts and then customers and then add customer. I'm going to use one that I already had set up just to make it quicker. The system then takes you through various screens in which you can enter your customers' details. It's up to you how much of this information you enter, and some of it you may consider to be unnecessary, but there are some screens where completing the information now will actually save you time in the long run, so I'll point out which they are. So you definitely need a customer name, obviously, and assuming you're going to email the invoice to the client, then you should have the first name of the person that you want to send it to here and the email address here. The next screen, the customer invoice default screen, is the one that will save you time later on. The default account code is where you want the invoice income to be allocated in your account. So here it's defaulted to revenue. You may have different headings for your business. The VAT rate is the VAT rate that you want to be added to the invoice. So if you're VAT registered, then you want this to be set to standard rate. If you're not VAT registered, just leave it blank or set it to 0. The default bank account is where you want the customer to send the payment. So if you have this completed here, it will save you clicking the bank details each and every time you raise an invoice to this customer. Then these bottom two fields are the default credit period that you want to be given to the customer. Normally this will be set by standard to 30 days, but I've set this one here to 10 days. You can change it to whatever suits your business. Customer bank account details, that's the customer's bank. I don't think that's necessary for you to have on your invoices. Invoice address, it's up to you whether you complete this or not. You may think it's unnecessary if you're emailing the invoice to the customer, but personally I think it looks better to show the address, and if you and the customer are both VAT registered, then it's obligatory to have the address on the invoice. Delivery address only necessary if you're providing goods and you're sending them to a different address to the invoice address, and generally I don't fill in these last two fields. So once you're happy with everything that you've entered in these screens, click on save and you're ready to raise the invoice. So to raise the invoice, you go into sales and then invoices and click on create invoice. The system will then take you through the various fields that you need to complete to send an invoice. So the first one is the customer name, and if you click on this drop down list, you can pick the customer that you wish to invoice. The date, it will default to the date on which you're raising the invoice, but you can change that to any other dates that suits you. So say we're going to send it out tomorrow. And then you can see the due date has automatically defaulted to 10 days later because this was the credit period that we had set up when we set up the customer. Invoice number over here, it's automatically just defaulted to 6, but you can set up whatever sort of invoicing or number order you like. So let's say we want to have it as 2018 and we want to have it as 105, not just 5 or 6, whatever it was before. Once you've set up manually an invoice number for a couple of times, the system will automatically default. So next time we might have to set up 2018106, but then probably by the time we get to 107, the system will have learned what we want and it will automatically appear in that box. Then down here in this box is where you type what you want to appear on your invoice. So say we're sending 6 crates of beer to our client. If we regularly send crates of beer, or we regularly send the same sort of good or service to our client, then we could have them set up here so that in this drop down list they appear and it saves us having to type every time. And to get them into this drop down list, you just click on this white cross here. You can either fill in the quantity column or you can just put the total here. So if each crate of beer cost £100, we could put in 6 and 100, or we could just type 600 in the unit box here. So we'll just do 600 here. Then if you press tab, it moves it across the screen, and you can see it now says 600 in the net fig screen. It's automatically put the VAT and it's automatically put the gross. This field here, it's defaulted to revenue because that's what we set up when we set up the client. If you didn't want it to be revenue, you can click on the drop down and choose a different category, and it's automatically defaulted to the VAT because that's what we set up. If you scroll down, you don't need to fill in the summary box, but you can do if you want, and you can see that it's automatically picked the bank account because that's what we set up when we set up the client. If we wanted it to go to a different bank account, we may have other bank accounts there that we could pick in the drop-down list. If you're happy with the invoice, you can then click Save. Then takes us to this screen where if you're not happy with the invoice, you could go back and edit it, or you can view it in PDF to see what it looks like. So that's what our invoice looks like to the client. This is fairly standard format, but you can edit the invoice and doctor it so that it appears how you want it. So you might have a logo up here, or you might want to change the color or the styling of the invoice. All of that you can do, but it's outside the scope of this video. Once you're happy with the invoice, you can then click on email and you can email it to the customer. So because we set up the customer details, the email address, when we set up the customer details, the email address has automatically appeared here, as has the Dear Jane. It's automatically defaulted to this wording. If you don't like this wording, then you can go into email and email templates and you can edit the standard wording to what suits you. And then if you're happy with the email, you can just click on Send Email, and that will have automatically emailed the invoice and the covering email to the client. If you now go back into Sales and Invoices, you can see that this is the invoice we just raised, and this button over here has turned blue, which is an indication that we have sent it to the client. And that's all there is to it. So I hope that's been useful, and I hope that will enable you to now raise your invoices to your customer.